Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode. I'm Mike Monticello.
I'm Alex and Isaac.
And I'm Kelly Funkhauser.
So today we're going to spend the majority of the episode talking about the redesigned 2023 Lexus RX, which we rented from Lexus for our first impressions of this vehicle. This is the fifth generation of the RX, which is a mid-size luxury SUV. And, you know, over the years, the RX has been an example of stress-free motoring due to, you know, just it's comfortable seats, comfortable ride, it's quiet, and also it's incredibly reliable, right? So historically reliable.
Yep.
People love this vehicle for all of those things, but it's never been particularly engaging to drive, okay?
Right.
Now, and that may change, just a hint. We'll see what happens during this episode. But because the one that we rented, and I'm guessing this maybe wasn't our first choice, but this is what Lexus gave us, is a 2023 RX 500h F Sport Performance all-wheel drive, which is a mouthful.
It's a big,
kind of a long name.
It's a lot.
But so maybe this, you know, is going to amp up the driving dynamics a little bit. So, but before we get into this specific vehicle, let's talk about the 2023 RX as a whole. Alex, just talk us through what are the new things with this 2023 version.
So it migrates over to Toyota's latest platform. So this TGNA-K. They've got a couple different versions of these. This is the K version platform. So that's also underpinning things like the Camry, the Lexus NX that we also tested. And I think it's a good opportunity to talk a little bit about these platforms because we hear this all the time, but really think more about modules that are shared across cars. It's not that the body in white between the NX and the Camry are all the same with all the same panels and all these things, right? It's more like the steering column and the seat relationship are the same, and maybe some of the engines, and we'll talk about that, are the same or shared across. But then, of course, the interior and the exterior are completely different. The sizes are different. So some shared things there, but ultimately it is quite different than those other vehicles. But like you said, Monty, the RX is pretty much Lexus' like bread and butter vehicle. I think I looked up some sales, and last year it was over a third of total Lexus sales in the US was just the RX. So it's beating out even the NX and all those other things. So
shows how important it is for them.
Super important. So this is a big redesign for them. But so just dimensionally, it's pretty much the same, actually. Length stays the same at 193 inches. It's a little lighter. Wheelbase stretches a little bit, but mostly it's the same size. But the big things are controls-wise, there's no more touchpad inside. And then the other big things are the powertrain. So before you were talking V6s, just a naturally aspirated V6 was kind of the standard engine, and then a hybrid V6 was the other option. But now everything is four-cylinder based.
Yeah, the V6 is gone.
It's gone completely. So you have a turbo 4 as kind of the base option, and then you have a four-cylinder hybrid, or the turbo four-cylinder hybrid that we rented, and then there's going to be a plug-in hybrid coming later. Yeah. So those are the big changes, and then of course price, it goes up a little bit. Starts at, or the existing one was kind of at $45,000. This is more like $48,000, $49,000. Right. That's where it starts.
Quick specifics on the RX 500h that we rented that we're going to be talking about today. 366 horsepower, 406 pound-feet of torque. It's that turbo four-cylinder hybrid that you just talked about.
Yep.
Has driver adjustable adaptive suspension, comes with that. Rear steering, which they call, again, a mouthful. Vehicle dynamics, integrated management, dynamic rear steering.
Wow.
I don't know if that's what's going to go. I don't know if that's what's going to go on the window sticker.
I don't think it'll fit.
Yeah. And also 6-speed automatic, which is kind of interesting because you just, you know, we've talked about this on the podcast before, but you just don't see many, besides Mazda, you don't see too many 6-speed automatics.
Yeah.
We'll get into later on that it really doesn't matter, actually, you know, that it's a 6-speed because it's so good.
I think it's kind of better for it, honestly.
And then this one had a whole bunch of options. And with the $1,150 destination charge, the estimated as-driven price of this RX 500h that we rented is $70,620. I want to get into the driving dynamics, but you know, we joke around sometimes around here, but there's also times that we really need to be serious and talk about things that affect people. And in this case, I think we need to really take a hard look at what the heck is up with this color on this vehicle. Can you explain to me?
I can try to explain. So I actually really enjoy when we rent cars, and it's kind of luck of the draw what the manufacturer sends to us, like Alex was saying.
Usually something crazy.
It's usually something crazy that looks really good in photos.
Exactly.
And this one was particularly unique.
Yeah.
It has kind of a shimmer to it that I think a few of us were joking it's the new Mary Kay type of, of a shimmer, right, on a car.
Yeah.
And Alex and I, we both really love to joke about the name that they give to these paint colors. They're almost absurd as nail polish paint colors. And so this time I decided to bring a prop. This morning, I decided to go through my nail polish collection and see if I could color match it. And I did very well. So I went ahead and painted my nails to match the color.
And what do they call it versus what Lexus
exactly.
calls
So
it?
Lexus calls theirs copper crest.
Yeah.
Oof, I don't know about that.
Exactly. So it's not necessarily true to life when you're in person. So in the sun, especially, it really has this kind of a pink undertone that you don't see online or on a screen.
The copper part, I was kind of surprised when I saw that was the name of it because I'm like more like Mary Kay Pink is honestly what came across.
Right, exactly.
100%.
And so they call it copper crest. I found a nail polish that is called Inferno.
Okay.
But it definitely has quite the pink undertone. So just know that if you're shopping for this car online, you might get a little surprised when you see it in person.
And I, not to make fun of Lexus, but they seemed very proud of this color for one thing when they
called it out specifically.
I liked it.
Our meeting.
I know.
You do like it? Okay.
I think it was polarizing amongst people.
I'm down for like cool colors on cars, like all the silvers and whites and stuff get super boring. I don't know if I would choose copper crest.
White, silver, so boring. Like I need some copper crest.
Well, as we always say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So we'll let you folks out there that are watching make your own judgments on it.
Right.
But as far as color aside, Alex, what is this thing like to drive? Let's just get into a little bit of driving dynamics stuff.
So, all right. First of all, it's completely tuned and set up to be comfortable and luxurious, soft suspension that absorbs the bumps, that type of thing. And I know we're talking about kind of a new performance version, which is a little kind of goes against the whole mission of the RX, in my opinion. I mean, I'm down with all the power. It's great. But in terms of trying to add some handling, extra sportiness, if you will, to the handling dynamics, doesn't really work out that well because it's still super soft.
Yeah.
But that's great. I think that's if you're somebody that really wants a comfortable car, and there seems to be less options these days for things that are truly comfortable and just stick to that, really comfortable kind of objective. This does a really good job, even in this 500H version.
So in a way, don't be scared by the F Sport part. Because
I don't think so. No,
because that's supposed to mean a pretty sporty vehicle.
Yeah, and it comes with some more aggressive, low-profile tires, and it has the adaptive suspension, and of course, the more power, the 366 horsepower that we're talking about. But yeah, I don't think it's really a sports SUV. If that's something you're looking for, maybe like an X5, something in that realm that's rear-wheel drive based would be.
So you're not going to be wowed by the handling.
I don't think so.
You're going to be
kind of dull.
You're going to be happy with the ride, even with these 21-inch tires. I was kind of impressed. That, you didn't get a lot of like harshness coming through. And I loved the powertrain.
It's great. Yeah. No, it's really nice.
The automatic shifts so smoothly. And like I said, just because it's 6-speed doesn't mean that it can't work well. It works.
That was my takeaway. Was as much as I love having that power and it is responsive, is that I would much rather have my hybrid with a 6-speed automatic than a CVT, which is what the lesser powerful RX hybrid comes with.
And Kelly, did you find something kind of similar with the ride and handling mix or balance?
Yeah, I kind of liked how with a lot of hybrids, you kind of feel that engine coming on and off at lower speeds. This kind of felt more smooth and gradual. It didn't feel like it was, changing, shifting all the time into higher gears. Mm-hmm. So I found it to be quite smooth and pleasant, especially, driving around the city.
Yeah. Yeah, I did too. And one thing I was a little confused about though was on my eval loop, which includes a highway section, according to the energy monitor on the infotainment screen, the gas engine was on the entire time, even on the slightly downhill sections where usually a hybrid would go into coast mode or
I noticed
mode.
it as well.
And this one was on the whole time. And it's a performance hybrid, so I get it to some extent. But also because of that, the powertrain was quite noisy. But then I found out later on there's some kind of an active sound control that I couldn't figure out how to turn off, but you did. And how do you do it?
It was buried a couple layers deep into some settings section of the center touchscreen. And I did it once. I turned it off, and then I, for comparison's sake, wanted to go turn it back on, and I couldn't find it again, even though I did it once before. It was really in there. So eventually, sitting in my driveway for a few minutes, I found it. But I did notice that, and it's pretty loud. There's a couple different settings for it, but It is loud, and I did notice that the engine was on quite a bit more often than with just a kind of a more efficiency geared type of hybrid.
Right.
But even with it off and the engine running all the time, you do hear it. The active sound control off is what I mean. And I don't know if it's charging the battery to some degree at times where you're not really on the power, so it's just kind of running in the background. I don't know, but you do hear it, and it took away a little bit from just that luxury feel.
That luxury hybrid serenity.
But I will say, this is just for full disclosure and kind of an asterisk on the whole thing, is that it's pre-production, right? So maybe that tuning will change when we buy one or experience one later.
We won't buy one of these. We're going to buy a regular RX 350 and an RX 350h, and this particular version is a very niche version. Totally. So we don't want to judge too much on this.
Right.
But the controls were probably going to be pretty similar across the board. And Kelly, you're kind of our controls and usability expert. So let's get into it a little bit. What is better about this new RX, and maybe what isn't? What is still annoying or distracting?
Yeah. So we were pleased to see that they have removed the touchpad that's, on the center console. We've had a lot of issues with that. There's kind of some backwards movements that you do, and they call it, the true touch, and it's all, kind of awkward to use, and people don't really like it. They end up, wanting to reach towards the touchscreen and just use that instead. So that is gone. Right. So now we have saved some real estate. It kind of cleans things up. However, the steering wheel now has capacitive touch and hard button combo, which are kind of a little confusing to get used to.
You mean because they're completely unlabeled and you have no idea what any of these buttons do?
Exactly. They're just totally unlabeled. Yeah. And so when you touch without pushing to push a button, you're just brushing, right? Yep. So it feels your finger on the button. Then you get a pop-up either in the driver display or in the heads-up display that kind of shows you a map of what those buttons will do at any given time, but they could change depending on what you're doing.
Oh, okay.
And there's buttons to switch, like below these little four-ways controllers, there's little toggles to switch. It virtually kind of flips the switch pack over, and now you have 4 other controls, right?
And that must be why they didn't label them, right? Because they're trying to be dual purpose.
Right.
So they couldn't really label them because then they'd be locked into those.
Exactly.
And what do you think?
I did not like that, especially when using like the adaptive cruise control, right?
Yep.
Like you have to kind of hover over it, and then, sometimes you push it, but you don't really know. And I had an issue where I had turned off the heads-up display because some people don't like them. Yeah, exactly. And then the map of what the buttons do temporarily pops up in the instrument cluster in the driver display, but it blocks everything else on the screen.
If you're trying to cycle through the pages,
exactly. I did that. So it was like, okay, so I push, side and I want to go side and side, so I put my finger up and don't push it, but touch it, and then it's covering the entire display of what it is.
The thing you're trying to change.
You want to go and change it, then you have to wait for it to disappear, see if that's the one. Nope. Okay, do it again. Is that the one? Nope. It was just kind of a bad design.
Yeah, 2 things on this, though. We saw it with the rented NXs that we borrowed maybe a year or so ago. And then when we bought our NX, kind of a lower, less, decked out trim level, it didn't have that. It had normal, because it didn't have a HUD. It seems to be tied to the HUD.
The head-up display.
The heads-up display,
Right.
Now, I will say, and there are some other issues, like when you're turning the wheel and you accidentally brush against the thing and it's just popping up in the HUD. That was a little distracting. But the one thing I did like about it is you can customize the controls if you dig into another crazy layer into the center
You'll
screen.
never find it again.
You'll never find it, but I did once. You can assign climate controls to one of the buttons on the left side of the steering wheel, so you can put temperature on there. Which I had that in an old Buick of mine that I just absolutely love being able to
So it's a nostalgia thing. It's not totally necessarily it's better. It's just 100% reminds you of your old car.
It was great. Okay. I don't even know if I used it, but I put them there, and
you just want to know you can. Yeah. Okay.
There's a couple of other issues. Some people didn't like the electronic door release buttons, and the electronic gear selector is a little wonky that you have to go up and left to go to reverse. Right. But what I enjoyed? There is a physical trip meter button on the left side of the dash that you just push.
Nostalgia.
And you can find it.
Old
like
school.
So many cars these days, you have to dig to find the trip meter. But let's move on from that. And Kelly, I want to talk to you some more about active driving assistance systems. Lexus has a new thing on this vehicle. I believe this is their first vehicle with this, called Proactive Driving Assist. Am I correct about that?
That's what they call it.
And it's something that you can choose or not choose on the infotainment screen. But tell us a little bit about what that is, because it's not readily obvious what it is.
It's
what it does.
definitely not obvious what it is. So in the menu screen, you can toggle the feature on and off, but that's the only information you have inside the vehicle about the system at all. So there's no description or a little, iText or something that you can push where it says, this is what proactive driving assist is. No graphics.
And this isn't something
nothing.
you're just making up. Other automakers do this, right?
Oh, yeah.
They give you the option either when you click on it, it immediately tells you what it does, or there's this little icon. If you want that information, you click on it, it shows up on the screen. Nothing here, right?
Right. It's just, it's blue, which is on, or it's gray, which is off.
With some ambiguous symbol probably to tell you.
Exactly. So I did play around with it. We did have kind of a hint from talking with Lexus about this vehicle. So, they kind of told us what to look for. So I kind of knew I had the cheat code. But what it essentially is an always on kind of distance indicator and assistance. So if you're driving, I was in Hartford driving around in traffic, and it was always looking for a vehicle in front of me. And when I was coming up closer to that vehicle, I'm coasting, there's going to be a red light. I felt what kind of felt like regenerative braking in an EV, right? Come on. And it was very gradual and subtle and kind of ramped up. But as I got closer, you could feel that braking. I really enjoyed it because it was quite subtle. And again, I'm like trying to figure out what this thing does. And I'm like, is that what it is? Okay, that's it. So it was subtle. And I really, felt that there's potential with this system to be, a safety system, because you get a little bit of that kinesthetic, feel of the brakes, which alerts you and, puts your attention on the road. So, you need to do some braking and things like that, but it was very non-intrusive. And so I really kind of liked how it worked.
Did it come across as more of like a convenience or a safety thing? I know they also said that it detects like pedestrians and cyclists and things like that, or corners of buildings, in fact. I'm assuming. I don't know if you experienced any of that. But
She tried not to run into a building.
Or a person.
Much appreciated. There were probably other people that had to drive it after.
But it's sort of like an early forward collision warning, in a sense, or automatic emergency braking, but without startling the heck out of you, right?
Yes, that's exactly how I would describe it. It's like an early system. So, the forward collision warning and automatic emergency braking are really kind of there at the last possible second to help you avoid or mitigate, the speed and impact of a collision. This kind of, alerts you. There was a little icon of a car that popped up in the driver display to say, hey, I see a car, and then you start to feel that braking. So it was kind of a visual warning without, being intrusive and annoying. You don't want to turn it off.
Right.
So it's kind of an early warning system. Potentially it could have safety benefits.
Right. Interesting about that. So we did talk, we had this meeting with Lexus, like we do with a lot of the manufacturers when they come out with a new vehicle. And I asked them about that. And I said, there's no information, right? And they said, well, yes, we realize that. We're going to put it on our dealers that they're going to inform the customers. That doesn't seem like a great plan, does it? I mean,
I don't even understand why. What the point? It doesn't seem like a great plan, but I don't understand why you even go down that route when you could easily implement something in the center screen to even explain at least the basic.
They did say thank you for bringing that up in the meeting. We've told our people. But as of now, we have no plans to put any information in the screens. I want to talk about, while we're on the subject, direct driver monitoring. This is something you and Jake Fisher have been harping on for a couple of years now, right? That's what systems with vehicles with active driving assistance systems, which is, we consider that the combination of adaptive cruise control and lane centering assistance. They should always have a direct driver monitoring system, so that if you let go of the wheel, which you shouldn't, folks, but if you did, it would notice if you weren't paying attention. This thing, so there's an infrared camera, right? And it's monitoring you all the time, even when you don't have ACC and LCA on, correct?
That's right. Yeah, we asked Lexus when the camera's on, can you turn it off? And we heard from them that the camera is always on. You can turn off these warnings. And I have a follow-up where they wanted to just make sure they were clear in their answer. The audio warning can be turned off, but the visual cannot. So you have this camera. And it's not linked to using the active driving assistance.
Which
right?
is different
so
than what we've seen so far.
Exactly. That means that, if you don't have to have this on because you're using those systems, I don't know how many drivers are going to essentially, want to have just a camera on them that could warn them that they're distracted or, not paying attention. I don't see much incentive for them to have it on. So that's definitely a concern.
Right. So you can turn the camera off.
So you can turn off the warnings, right? So if you're like...
Well, but the one in the instrument cluster will always come on if you... Correct.
So according to Lexus, they said the camera is always on, but you can turn off the warnings. So the people that are going to leave it on are probably the people that don't need it as much.
Right.
If you're someone that's like, I don't want the car to beep at me and whatever, when I'm looking at my phone or something, you're probably going to turn that off.
So on the one hand, this is a good thing, right? Because you could be distracted anytime, not just when you're using active driving assistance, but if it annoys you, that's not a good thing, right? If it's warning you, if it's giving you warnings when you kind of are paying attention.
Right. And I found that. Yeah, when I tried it out, it most of the time it worked well, and it is responsive in terms of the time it takes for it to react and warn you. So if I was looking away for, let's say, 5 seconds, that 3 to 5 seconds maybe, it would give a little beep and a message. But then it would also do that other times where I was just driving and not trying to trick it or do anything, right? Just driving, and it would just kind of false alarm type thing. So that was a little annoying for me. So that's more of a tuning issue. But just anecdotally, I was driving this car around with my wife, Allie, and I was explaining kind of how it worked and what the system does. And her immediate reaction, without driving the car, but just seeing it in action, was that she would really want that in her car. To just bring her attention back to the road if she gets distracted or anything like that. So where it was annoying me, she saw that and was like, that's great.
Yeah.
And I actually have some numbers from a survey that we put out 2 years ago.
We love
2020.
numbers.
I love numbers. There's a fair amount of people, almost 50% of drivers. This is a nationally representative survey, so it's not just our members, that say they want in a new car some sort of a system that can alert them if they are drowsy or distracted and things like that. So people do want this, but I do feel that the manufacturer needs to put some sort of an incentive in there or benefit for using the system. Otherwise, I think a lot of drivers are going to turn it off.
Yeah, or at least just make sure that it's tuned really, really well, so that, because those annoying moments, if it were me, that's what's going to make me shut it off, and then I'm going to lose all the benefit from it, right?
Yeah, I do want to bring up one more important fact, though. And we asked Lexus this when they were describing the system to us, is about privacy, right?
Yes.
Anytime there's a camera in the car, that's definitely a concern. And it wasn't very clear. We didn't get a clear answer from Lexus as to what happens to these recordings. They are being recorded. It's in, the menu. It says that and everything. They said that their answer was the owners can request the recordings. They can have access to that. But when we asked, well, can you have access to that? Who else could have access to that? Where are the recordings being saved? We didn't get a clear answer on that. And so that's something that we're going to follow up with and definitely keep our eye on.
And thanks both of you. That was great analysis of this vehicle. We have a lot more up on consumerreports.org, a full first drive on this RX 500H and some information about the regular RX in general. We will be buying both the kind of more conventional RX 350. We're also buying the RX 350H, the hybrid, and we'll be getting them in more mainstream trims, not this high zoot version.
Probably mainstream colors too.
Probably mainstream colors, although you never know. Check that out, and we'll have more on that very soon. All right, and now let's move on to our audience question of the week. Don't forget, folks, the best way to reach us is to send your questions, comments, 30-second video clips to talkingcars@icloud.com. So this week, we have a question from Robert, and Robert says, The staff of Talking Cars often comments negatively upon the reduction in tactile controls in favor of touchscreen controls, but you often overlook voice controls, which are becoming ubiquitous, reliable, and easier to use than moving my hand from the steering wheel. I would love to hear the Talking Cars team comment on voice controls and the role they play in your reviews. Kelly, I'm going to start with you. Again, controls and usability is a huge part of what you do here. So what's your answer to Robert?
Yeah, so he's spot on. They are becoming more and more common in cars, and they're getting better. Everyone loves to harp on the bad voice controls. It heard something completely, bonkers from what I said, but they are getting better. They're more naturalistic, using, regular phrases that you don't have to learn, which is the big one, right? Exactly. So as Alex, you're part of the usability team as well. We do look at the voice controls in the car. So part of the assessment, we do, see what is available. First of all, can you change climate settings, media, audio type of stuff, all those types of things. And so we try them out. But like he said, they're becoming more common. They're still not that common in cars. And so we actually have a survey.
Don't tell me you have more numbers for us.
I love data.
That's great.
And so we found by asking, again, nationally representative survey, that how often they use the voice commands in their car to do certain tasks. And so for adjusting the climate, people who say they do it every time they drive or most of the time they drive comes out to 31%.
Okay.
So bigger numbers than we had seen in the past.
Right. But, and also just real quick to your point, it will be impacted by the fact that not every car, like adjusting climate with voice controls is kind of a new feature of them, or newer than something like changing radio station.
It's true. That is a
or
caveat.
making a phone call.
Right, exactly.
Right. So these are for people who have the voice controls to do these tasks in their car. That's right. So huge caveat there. Adjusting audio settings, 26% is every time or most of the time. Making a phone call, 30%. Setting a destination in their nav system, 20%. So still kind of lower numbers. What we find is that it's not necessarily the primary source of using the climate in the navigation system. That's just how often some people might do it. And so we still want to make sure that not using the voice controls, so using them with your fingers, touch screen, hard controls are
the fundamentals still need to be in place and accessible for the other 70% or 80% in some cases that aren't going to use those.
And I think part of the problem is, even though they're getting better, it seems like more often than not, on the rare occasions that I do use voice control, it doesn't work right. Like I say, call this person, and they either the thing says call someone this other name, or just is confused by what I asked for at all.
Right.
And so I just usually end up not using them, and I have a feeling that's what a lot of people are doing.
Yeah.
Once it gets better and easier, then you press one button and you tell the car to do anything you want, and it does it, then that's when people will hop on board, right?
You got it.
Especially as things get buried more and more. Like if I could maybe say to that Lexus, turn on and off the active sound control, which I didn't ask. I should have asked. Maybe I will do that. I wouldn't have had to dig through to find that,
but they shouldn't be used as a crutch either. So having a bad interface, you can use the voice controls, that's not an excuse. You should have good both, ideally, right? So that people have options.
Right.
100%.
And
100%.
as part of our evaluation, not only are we doing it in our controls kind of, debrief, if you will, that we have, where we kind of have our main group that scores controls, but also collecting everybody's comments and logbooks, everybody that drives the vehicles that might use the voice controls. We kind of collect all that as well, right?
Great. Good stuff, Robert. There's your answer. That's going to do it for this episode. If you want to learn more about the cars and the topics that we talked about, you can click on the links in the show notes. Don't forget to send those questions, comments, 30-second video clips to talkingcars@icloud.com. This episode was produced by Dave Abrams and edited by Anatoly Shumsky. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you all next week.